So hi, my name is Carly Faye Grace. My sobriety date is March 1st, 2020. So I'm coming up to 11 months of sobriety. My journey has been a rough one. I would say my childhood was wonderful. I grew up in a very loving home. I played a lot of sports along with my brother. We were both very physically active and competitive in sports. And that was a huge part of my nature, my competitive spirit. And that actually has a big part of my story of why it took me so long to surrender. I came into the fellowship when I was about 25. I'm now 35. So you can do the math. It's taken me a long time to get 11 months of sobriety. And part of that was because I had that competitive spirit. I had that pride. I had that tenacity that I could do things on my own. I believed I could do anything with my willpower. But I could not beat alcoholism with my willpower. And that took a long time to accept. I came in and out of the program so many times. I would get 1 month, 2 months, 3 months of sobriety, and then slip. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months sobriety, slip. I never got a 4-month coin until this year. And that was huge. I finally, this past March, surrendered. And that word was not in my vocabulary. Like I said, I was very persistent and I could do anything I put my mind to, but I could not beat this disease on my own. I had to surrender and give up my will over to a power higher than myself. And, admitting that I was an alcoholic was not a problem. For many years, my parents would find bottles around the house, and every month or so, they would come in with a garbage bag, dump the empty bottles on my bed, and say, "Really? You don't have a problem?" And I'd say, you didn't find those from the time before, or, I would come up with excuses, and those were from last time, you must have missed those ones. But I was kidding myself, and I was not being honest with myself or anybody around me, which is a huge part of this disease. I was a liar, I was a thief, I was a cheat, I was sneaky. And I thought I was good at it, and I was for a bit. But it got to the point where I was so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was defeated. I had come to the point of suicidal thoughts. I had felt like I was never going to be able to beat this thing. And the one thing about my tenacity that I can give myself credit for is that I never stopped coming back. No matter how hard it was, I would still go to meetings. I would still pick up that 24-hour chip. And I have enough of those to make a very long necklace, but I still kept coming back. Part of me knew that this was a part of me. This was a part of my life, and I had to accept that. Admitting it was easy. I could admit that it wasn't normal to go get 2 magnums of wine and 2 Mickeys of vodka on a Tuesday night and think that I was going to space that out. I didn't space that out. I would drink it all until it was gone, until I blacked out. Blackouts are a big part of my drinking story. I drank to the point of blackout every time. When I first started drinking in my early 20s, it started out fun. I had a good time. I was in the restaurant industry, and it was just kind of a part of the scene. Everybody drank, everybody did drugs, and I did have fun. But I started to lose all my friends from high school. I started to just be around those people that were drinking like I was and partying like I was. And eventually I lost those friends too. And I would try to move locations, move jobs, and think that would be the solution. Go to a different restaurant, guess what? There's people that drink and do drugs at every restaurant. And I would be a magnet to those people. And then I started to pursue my career in early childhood education. I have a passion for teaching kids. I love it. I'm good at it. But I ended up losing that job too. The thing with this disease is that it is progressive. Every time I went back out, I would lose something else. Every time I would lose another job, I would lose more friends. I would eventually lose my license. I would eventually lose my condo. And it came to the point where I had to move back home with my parents, which was a humbling experience, but it's what I needed to do. I could not live on my own. I tried. I went to rehab 3 times. And I did get something out of every rehabilitation center that I went to. But the real thing that changed it for me this time around was surrendering and being honest with myself and with others, most importantly with myself. I thought that I had step 1 for so long, and I would move on to try to do other steps and try to do a 4th step inventory, and I hadn't even accepted step 1 yet. I was moving through the steps in all the wrong order. And this time around, I have accepted step 1 right away, and thoroughly gone through with a wonderful sponsor, steps 1 through 6. I am now on step 6. And doing that 4th and 5th, where I really took a thorough inventory of myself, of what has happened in my life, what I've done to others in my life, and my part in all these situations, and the patterns that have been throughout my journey. That's a really humbling experience, and it really, the patterns stick out so obviously after I do it. It's unreal. I'm like, how did I keep doing the same things over and over and expecting a different outcome? It's insanity. That's what it is. And that is a huge part of this illness. The one thing that also I think helped me this time around is getting into service. That 3rd month where I usually relapsed, I actually lost a dear friend to suicide. And unfortunately, that's part of this disease, is we're losing people. and it's heartbreaking. But at that point, I had the opportunity to host a meeting that meets 3 times a day on Zoom. Everything's on Zoom right now. And I was ready to throw in the towel and say, listen, I need to grieve, I can't do this. But I didn't. I stuck to my commitment, and I hosted that meeting every single day, 3 times a day for a month. And I truly believe that's what kept me sober and over that hump. I got out of myself, I got out of my head, and I got into recovery. And recovery has been at the forefront of my mind throughout these past 11 months. And that was not always the case. You know, I went to meetings before to appease my family, to say that I went to a meeting, to just pretend. And when I finally gave in to a power greater than myself, and I had to believe there's a power greater than myself, you know, looking around, my higher power is nature and outside in the wilderness. And if I look outside in the world, like, there's so much beauty. How can I not believe in a power greater than me? And when every morning I say my 3rd step prayer, and every night I say thank God for another day of sobriety, because I have finally am starting to see the promises coming true. When I first started going to meetings, I heard those promises and was like, yeah, right. Like, you know, not regret the past or wish to shut the door on it. I wanted to lock on my past, put it in a closet, padlock it, and never look at it again. And that's what I was doing with alcohol. I was pushing it down. I was pushing down my feelings. I was pushing down my past. I was pushing down a trauma. And that wasn't working. It was not working. And I was drinking myself to death. There were so many times where I should have died. I have broken many bones. I have cracked my head open several times. One time my parents came home to me on the kitchen floor, my head cracked open, lying in a pool of blood. And they thought I was dead. Like, no parent should have to see their child in that situation. And I felt a lot of guilt and shame for the things I put my family through. But today, they're proud of me. It's taken a long time. But now I have, you know, my story is my story, my history is my history, and it is what it is. I can't do anything about it. I can't change it. But what I can do today is live in the solution. And for me, that is 12-step recovery. And every day I have to hand my will over to a power greater than myself. And every night I have to thank God for another day of sobriety, because I'm so lucky. I should not be here, but I am. And there's a reason for that. I think part of that reason is to be able to share my story with other people and to show that there's hope. I was one of those people that I thought would never get this program, would never get sober, would never be able to get to a year's sobriety. You know, my parents used to think that, okay, just take a year off drinking and then come back and we'll be able to drink again like normal people. I could never get to that year. I couldn't get past 3 months because I'm an alcoholic. And that is something I had to accept, and so did they. You know, it's a family disease. And, you know, my family can drink like normal people. They can have a couple and stop. I don't have a stop button. As soon as I press play, as soon as I have that first drink, there is no stopping me. One is too many, and 1,000 is never enough. And it's so true. I will find it. I will find more wherever it is, I will find it. But as long as I don't take that first drink, I'm going to be okay. And, you know, this pandemic and being isolated, that would have been so ideal for an alcoholic, to isolate and to drink myself to death. You know, a few years ago, I probably would have done that. But the fact that, you know, everything happens for a reason. I had moved to my parents just before the pandemic hit, and I was in a safe place, and I was in a place where I could dedicate my life to sobriety being first. Every time I came out of rehab before, I would come back and I'd go straight back to work, and I'd expect a different outcome, but I'd be going straight back to the things that would trigger me before without really working on myself. And I really needed that time off work, that time of self-reflection, that time of listening to other people's stories and being able to relate and being able to see myself in their stories. And I have had such an amazing fellowship that I'm a part of, and it has saved my life. I have a wonderful sponsor, and I'm just so grateful today that I am relieved of the bondage of self, that I am relieved of the bondage that I had to alcohol, because I fought it for so long. And what was I fighting for? I was fighting to hold on to this life of torture, self-torture. You know, to have to think every day of where your next drink is going to be, and do I have enough, and when does the store close, and how can I get it, and how can I hide it, and just everything is so difficult that way. And I fought it for so long, but this is the easier and softer way. It says that, and I didn't believe it, but it's so true. This is the easier, softer way. Surrendering. I never thought I'd say that, but I really believe it's true. And if I can help one person with sharing my truth, then I feel compelled to do so. I'm sick of seeing people die from this disease. I really am. And there is a solution. And the solution is surrendering. Admitting that I am powerless over alcohol and that my life had become unmanageable. I had to admit and accept that. And I had to move forward with the steps with all my heart. And I think that I'm on the right path, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful I have the family and support that I do, and the sponsor that I do, and the fellowship that I do. And I'm going to keep working this program for the rest of my life because it's so much better. I'm happy, and I'm living in my parents' basement at 35, but I'm happy. And I know there's better things to come. I know that I'm going to find love and a relationship and all those other things that happen. But I was putting all those things before sobriety. And anything that I put before sobriety will be the first thing that I lose. And I'm not putting out anything else before sobriety today.